Okay, oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. Got a little record notice. All right, guys. Hello, my name is Summer Montenegro, and I'll be your instructor today. Before we jump right into it, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a graphic designer at Newell Brands, and Newell Brands is just a fancy term for a company that owns a bunch of different brands. But being on the writing team, I get to work on a ton of projects with Sharpie and Papermate. So I get to use these things a lot. So just jumping right into this, we can actually probably go overhead already now. And also, again, as mentioned before, if anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to put it in the chat. We'll have a team to answer those, or I'll also watch the chat and see, and I can try to respond to them as well. So starting off with the supplies, we have this whitewashed plaque. It's pretty much just like a sign. It's just like a simple board. And you can also do this on paper too, if you don't have this exact board, or maybe it's a square or just a different type of material. Doesn't have to be this. And then our second thing is just Sharpies. I have a whole bunch of Sharpies here, a multitude of colors. I had chosen the Mystic Gems colors though, just so that there's a little bit more of earthy tones, nothing too crazy and vibrant. I wanted this to be very homey and also just very fall-like versus having something with tons and tons of color. And then lastly, we have a pencil and eraser. Doesn't matter what type it is, just need something to sketch out what we're working with. So jumping right in, this is going to be what we're making today. This beautiful sign. I have multiple versions of it. I had to make sure I was giving you guys the best options here. So we're going to go over different ways of just laying down Sharpie on a new material, as well as playing a little bit with hand lettering here. So starting with our pencil, I'm just going to quickly start referencing where each of the items are. I don't want to start drawing super heavy lines because the Sharpie is actually going to pick that up with the ink. So I'm just going to do very, very light lines, just referencing where the berries are, where the leaves are, and then also where the wreath is. And I'll walk through that. So just starting at the bottom, I'm just going to reference just some circles. And also you can put as many berries as you want. You can have them super big or small. And like you can already see that I'm not making it exactly like the reference and the final. I'm just doing it as I feel it. Maybe I want one down here, another one here. And then I'm going to start doing the leaves. And just start arcing them up. Again, don't do anything that's going to be too dark and be hard to erase. We're just going to make just very light reference lines here for us. Also, what I love about this circle, you'll see me do a lot, is I'm using it almost like a lazy Susan. I just love being able to turn what I'm drawing on. Makes it super easy. You can also add different types of leaves. I'm just keeping it simple here just for time's sake, but you can also add vines or anything else you want down here. And so jumping into the wreath part, what I'm going to do is actually use this board as my reference guide because I can't draw a perfect circle. I'm not going to say I can do that because I can't. So what I'm going to do is actually utilize the fact that this board is circular and pretty much use it as my guide. So maybe I want it to be about an inch in. So I'm just going to start drawing an inch in, and I'm just going to use the edge of the board as my reference and just not even think about drawing a circle, but rather drawing a line that follows the curve of the circle. So I'm just very lightly doing that as well, just around. And you'll notice in the final, I don't have the top connected, it kind of ends, but you can also make it a full circle and make it a full wreath as well. Let me go around. Again, another benefit of having this be able to turn is just being able to rotate it. All right, perfect. So now that we have this outlined, we're almost there and ready to immediately go into the Sharpie. The last thing I want to do though is just make sure that I don't put a giant leaf that comes in through here, and then I won't be able to put any copy in the middle. So what I'm going to do is just kind of block off where I want to put the type. I'm not going to worry about writing it out or anything yet. I'm just kind of imagining there's a box around these shapes and then drawing that here in the center. just so that I don't accidentally block it off. I make sure I have space for it. And also just for me to remember where the center is. Because once you start adding some details to the leaves and everything, you can kind of start to lose where the actual center of the board is. We're just gonna draw a little square. Awesome. So I don't know if you can see that, but I just have a little square just in the center. And I have all my outlines. So now we get to go right into color. So I'm going to start with all the leaves down here and then work my way up around this wreath. Because the wreath is pretty just intuitive and you can kind of add what you want. But with this, there's a little bit of layering. So I'm going to start here. So starting with these berries here, we got some pinks and purples. So I'm going to start with this very, very light pink. It's almost like a pink lemonade color. And so I'm just going to start filling in these circles here. And not having them all be pink, but just having some of them pink, some of them purple. Just gonna start filling that in. And one thing too, you'll notice it's kind of far away, but I'm using my strokes in the same shape as the circles. So that when you're doing this, it's almost adding dimension just from the stroke shape. So you'll see in the final how there's kind of lines that follow the shape of the leaves and the circles. And that's just to help make dimension without adding too many layers of color or different colors. So I'm just going to quickly go through here. Again, just following the shape of the circles here. Maybe I want this big one to be pink too. You also don't have to use pink too. You can easily switch this out with any color you want. I just liked these colors. And then I'm just going to do the same thing, except I'm going to grab a light purple because we're going to be layering this. So I'm just going to grab this super light purple and do the same thing and just fill in those other circles. We're just getting a base coat down so then we can add a little bit more layering on top with darker colors. So don't worry too much about making this part perfect. I'm gonna grab the big one, be the big purple one here. Again, just following the shape of that circle, but I'm not focusing too much on making sure it's perfect. I like leaving some white in the center to have some natural highlight in there. Because once you put down color, you can't erase it with Sharpie. So here we got our berries down. And then we're also going to do the same thing with these leaves. So again, I'm just going to grab a super light green here. It's almost bluish too, but I also like that. It gives it a little bit of a cooler temperature to these leaves. Because I don't know about you, but it is very cold where I am right now. And then again, just like we did with the berries, we're kind of following the shape of the leaf and we're kind of arcing our strokes versus just pressing hard and just filling it in. I think I grabbed a blue than a green, but that's okay. We're going to make this a little bit more wintry, kind of matches the time that we're doing this in November. There we go. Switch over to the other side. Start filling that in. Oh, I'm in Michigan. Yeah, it is. We already had multiple snows already, so I don't know what it's like in New York, but I grew up in Pennsylvania, so I know a little bit about the weather down there. It's usually pretty similar to Michigan, but I'm surprised that I have to start shoveling soon. I'm not too happy about it. But it is very pretty, I will say that. It also lends itself for artwork like this, so that makes me happy. All right, so once we have these leaves filled in, I'm actually going to start layering this first, and then we can start working on the wreath and just do all that together. So working on the layering next for the berries, I'm actually just going to go in and grab a darker pink. So here's this one, the next one I'm going to do. This is the one we used before, just for reference. So it's a lot darker, but what we're going to do is just start defining the lines as well as just defining those shadows too. And so with the shadows, things like this berry on the bottom, I'm going to make this one a lot darker. So I'm just going to add more color to it. I'm still going to leave a little bit of white though, because I don't want it to be too dark down there. And with these, again, I'm not being super specific on where the lines are going. I'm just kind of following the shape, making sure I'm getting those edges. Because one thing I like about this board and the wood is that because it has a little bit of a rustic feel, I like pairing that with more of a rustic style drawing. Just kind of having these rough lines here. It also shows it was hand done, which I like being able to say I did this and you can tell that I did it and it still looks good. If it looks too much like a photo, I'm like, but did you actually make it? I'm very impressed. Alrighty, and then we're gonna do the same thing, but we're gonna do it with the purple. So we're just layering some more color on there, and we're gonna go back and do that again. Because one thing that's nice with Sharpies is that once it dries, you can kind of go back with the same color and go over it again, and it gets darker. So we're gonna go and grab a slightly darker purple. Similar to the pink, it's just a shade darker. And we're gonna go over and add those shadows in again. Just on the purples though. There we go. Awesome. Make sure just to define those edges too, because sometimes the edges will get a little bit blurred. You want to make sure each berry is its own. Do it down here too. And then again, the berries on the bottom, you want to make sure you add a lot right on the edges, just because we're trying to define where the berries are touching, and then we're just going to add shadows there. Perfect. And then we're going to do the same thing with the leaves, except we might add some veins on there too with the color that we're going to use. So just like we did, we're going to just take a darker green. So I had accidentally used this like more blue color, but that's fine. We can have a nice cool undertone. So we're just going to take this green and start making our layers here. And so when we're adding these shadows too, we're kind of pretending that the text in the middle is where our light source is. And so the light's kind of radiating from the center. So anything on the outer edges is going to be a little bit darker. So when I draw in on these leaves down here, I might add a lot more of the darker colors on the bottom. That's where the shadows are going to be. I'm going to add a little bit more here just because I want it to be a little bit more green. And then we're also kind of dividing the leaf too in half, kind of to showcase those veins and show the division there. Do that here. And then we're probably going to grab another dark green because I think this is a little too light still. It's adding some nice layers of color, but I really want to start showing those shadows in there. Just going to fill that in. There we go. Oh, you must be so warm in Florida. I'm actually going to be going to Florida this Friday. Actually, I'm leaving for a road trip down there, so that should be fun. I'm very excited to be warm, so maybe I'll run into you. All right, so we're grabbing another darker green here. We're just going to add a lot more shadow into these leaves. They're coming out a little bit too light for my liking, so I'm just going to add a bit more color in there. This time I'm being a little bit more intentional with my strokes though, because I don't want the shadows to go everywhere. I don't want to overwhelm the piece. I'm going to let that side dry a little bit. I think the Sharpie. Oh, yeah, I'm going to let that side dry a little bit. Sometimes it starts getting a little stuck on the older Sharpie. It starts to get a little stuck. So if you have that, just try twisting your Sharpie to the another side to let that ink kind of give rest to it to come back. My Sharpie might also just be out of ink. Oh, there we go. There we go. Oh, it's still barely coming out here. I'll switch to another darker green. That's okay. This color I'm grabbing is actually like a dark green and dark blue. So it actually kind of works out because we had that little undertone of blue. So this matches even more. Just gonna add darker layers on top. Oh no, my Sharpie is still kind of failing on me. That's all right. Just gonna add the shadows down here too. It also could be. These Sharpies are running out. That's okay. I also brought extras if need be. Here, we're gonna improvise a little bit here. We're actually gonna move on to the wreath and do that. And we'll come back to shading the leaves a little later because my Sharpie's kind of running out. I'm gonna let it sit a little bit to let some of that ink go back to the tip. So going into the wreath, we're doing a very similar thing to here, and we're just gonna start with our base color. And then we're also gonna start adding some fun leaves and some extra berries. So again, we're gonna start with, where's that green? Here it is. This super bright green. Because it's such a thin line that we're making this wreath with, I just want something that's really gonna pop on the board. So I'm using this green. So again, I'm just following that line that I made along the edge. And I'm just gonna draw it. And it doesn't have to be super straight either, because we can make this as thick or as thin as we want. And another thing too is that with nature, it's not a perfect line. You look at a vine, you look at a branch, it's not going to be a perfectly straight line. They're all different and unique. So no matter how you draw this line, it's going to look beautiful. So again, I'm not going to finish the top. I'm not going to make it a full circle. I kind of want to just arc and hold the letters. So I'm just going to end that there and then start another line over here. Just quickly go down. And you might look at this and think that this is too thin. So you can always go back in and thicken it up a bit, which is what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go and follow my line again and just make it a little bit thicker. And as you can see, we already have almost what looks like a perfect circle. And we did that all by hand without using a compass or anything. It's great. Here we go. Thicken up this side too. Perfect. Awesome. And then we're going to do a little pre-planning here and still using the green. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start just kind of drawing out where I want the leaves. So you'll see on here, I just kind of have a little bit of green coming out, connecting the leaves and the berries. So I'm just going to start drawing some lines there. Just kind of these little branches coming off. And then also, if you see this and you're like, I want more leaves or I want more berries or whatever have you, add it as much as you want or as little as you want. Maybe you just want some green on there. That's totally fine too. Add that, add some on the other side too. Because the fun part is actually adding the colors, the leaves and everything. These are just little accents to make it look a little bit more real. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so now that we have our little spikes kind of coming out, we're going to add some leaves and berries to that so it doesn't look quite like thorns. So we're actually going to go back to that pink because I kind of want it to be the same type of berries up here as it is down here. So I'm just going to grab that same super light pink that I had. I'm going to start drawing some circles and just kind of building up almost like little bushes of berries on some of these. And they also don't have to always connect to one of those lines. You can also have it just connect directly to your wreath as well. So I'm just going to go through here and add some in here. And all I'm really doing is just drawing circles. There's really no fancy technique to that. I'm just drawing little circles next to each other. I'm going to do the other side as well. There we go. And then we get to work in the leaves. And I know I realized that this set that I have here has very fall-like leaves. And depending on where you are, if you want to follow the leaves around you, maybe they're still green, if they're still yellow, or maybe they're a different color, by all means, make them blue, purple, orange, green. Or even if there's snow, like in my case, you can always make them blue or covered in snow. All right, so now that I have some berries down, I'm gonna do the base of my leaves. And since I'm making my leaves very fiery looking, yellows and reds, I'm gonna start with a base of yellow. So I'm doing that same thing. I'm just gonna start outlining and filling in where those leaves are. And with this, I'm not using a pencil first. I'm just kind of using my imagination, just gonna pick out where I want to put them, as well as just how big they are. So up here, I might want a small one, but then maybe here, I want maybe a bigger one, so it fills in this space a little bit more. Just gonna fill that in. And just go around and fill it with whatever base color you want. And same thing with the leaves too. They don't have to all be connected to one of the little branches that you made. Not all leaves are attached to a little branch. And quick fill these guys in, and then do the other side as well. Make this one a little bigger. This area is pretty blank. There we go. Fill that in. Oh, I had a fun fact that I learned recently, and it's not necessarily relevant to exactly what we're doing, but I thought of it and I wanted to share it. But do you guys know that we're getting rid of daylight savings? I know some people love it, some people hate it, but I found that out recently. And apparently next year, after we roll the clocks forward, they're getting rid of it. It's not going to happen in fall anymore. I found like an article, it's like the Senate decided we're getting rid of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I feel about that. It's so weird. All right, so moving on, we're going to start layering in our leaves and our berries. So we're going to go back to the berries just to let the yellow of the leaves dry. So again, going back from this light pink, we're going to go in and we're actually going to grab that purple. Because they're so small, we're going to have harsher shadows just so the contrast is easier to see. So I'm going to that light purple. I'm not taking the darker one, just the lighter one. And then what I'm going to do, which I'm going to quick do an example so you know what I'm talking about. I'm just going to do the edge of the circle. So if I have a circle here, because it's so small, if I try to put in a ton of detail of having lines going across it, it's going to be hard to see. But if I just do just one side, it already starts to look a little bit like it's shadowed, even though I just drew like a single line across the edge of it. So that's pretty much what we're doing, except with these berries. So all I'm doing is just adding a little line on the sides of them. It's going to be a little hard for you guys to see me doing it, but once you start doing this, you're going to start realizing, yeah, they have shadows now. They look a little more connected. So it's going to have just one little side of pink and then a little side of purple. And then again, we're also still following that guideline that the middle is where the light's coming from. So on the left side, I'm drawing the shadow on the left. And then for the ones over here, I'm drawing the shadows on the right. So I'm pretty much making like little crescents over these circles. Just add just a little bit of dimension here. And I'm probably going to hang this on my front door too, so my neighbors will be able to see it from far away and they don't have to like look up super close to see it. All right, so I think these leaves are ready to go in with another level of color. So I'm actually going to go with an orange. Let's see here. Yeah, let's pick this one. It's almost like a peachy orange, but I think it's going to be a nice mid-tone for the leaves here. So just like we did with these bigger leaves here, I'm just going to go in and kind of go right where the shadow is going to be, and then kind of divide the leaf in half. And what's great too is you can always come back if you feel like there wasn't enough color on that leaf beforehand. Don't worry, we can always come back. The problem is that when you put too much, you can't take back the color. So you can always start with a little bit and then add more as need be. So again, I'm kind of imagining where the light's coming from the center. These edges are lighter, and then having the darker on the top and on the edges. So we're just building up color here. And then I'm going to do it on the same over here, dividing our leaves. And again, following this, the shape that you drew. And what I love about things like this is it's kind of like you drew your own coloring book and you're just kind of filling it in. But you got to say that you made the coloring book. Just going to fill that in. There we go. Light's kind of coming in from the bottom of that one. Although I think I want a little more orange on this one. I don't want it to be all yellow. Kind of hard to see. There we go. Beautiful. Awesome. And then since this side probably had more time to dry, I'm just going to go right into my darker orange. Just this nice, almost auburn orange. I'm going to really define the shadows here. So again, being a little bit more intentional with my strokes, I'm just going to do the edges and then a little bit of the bottom and then maybe just a line down the center just to help define where the edges are, as well as where that vein's going to go. Because what we can do is we can actually make the veins with just a darker color, or we can go back in at the very end and outline it, because I outlined my final one. So if we have time in today's class, we can go over and outline everything. And that's where you'll see the veins that I made with the black. But for now, we're just going to use the darker colors to kind of draw those in. Having it non-outlined also has its own unique qualities and style to it as well. So if you don't like outlined artwork, you totally don't need to do that. There we go. Just on the edges here. And so even just now looking at some of these, I think I might want to go back in with some of the lighter orange. I think some of my leaves are still a little bit too yellow. And again, that's why it's good to not go too hard with the first strokes, because you can always go back in. There we go. Yeah, I'm just going to quickly go back to my slightly lighter orange and just kind of fill in some of that yellow, just a little bit.
Hey, Summer.
Yeah.
We are about halfway through the class.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Then we will jump into the text then, just to make sure we get that part done, and then I can show you guys some more shading. Just in case, since my Sharpies were running out of ink. All righty. I also figure out a little bit of red over here. There we go. Awesome. All right, let's jump into the text for now, which I think is one of the funnest parts. So remember that square that we drew in the center? We're going to start using that now. And what we're going to do is kind of imagine where the shapes are for each individual word now. So instead of imagining a big box around all of it, we're going to imagine a box just around the jump, just around the into, and then just around the fall. And again, if you guys want to do something like winter wonderland, or maybe it's summertime or it's warm, you can put whatever words you want. You can apply this effect to any words as well. So for jump, I'm just going to imagine that the J is kind of coming out here. So it's going to take up about half of that box that I drew in. And then the into part is in between the J and P. So I almost don't even really need to worry about that one. And the bottom of the box is where fall is going to go. So what I'm going to do is start drawing out, just so you guys can see it a little bit better. I'm just going to start drawing out the letters. Don't worry about how thick it is. Don't worry about those strokes that are thicker and it almost looks like you was done with a brush pen, because we're actually going to learn how to do that without a brush pen. So we're just going to go in with just some nice cursive here, going up. And again, don't be afraid to lift up your pencil too. I lift up my pencil all the time. And they also don't have to be all connected. You'll see in the final that I don't think any of them are actually connected, even though it's cursive. I just think it looks better that way. Awesome. So jump, it's kind of hard to see for you guys. It has jump. And I'm just going to draw into just very lightly in between that J and the P. And then for fall, nice and big, very curvy letters. I'm just going to draw in these letters here. There we go. Ooh, I think these letter forms are a lot more fun and all than my original. Okay. So now that we have our lines drawn out here, we're gonna go in with, let's pick out a nice blue color. I just want something that's gonna stand out against the warm colors that I have in the leaves. So using this nice dark blue, I'm just gonna do the same thing and follow my reference lines. Don't worry about thickness again, even if you hold the Sharpie at an angle or a finer tip, either one works. We're just trying to get the letters down first. Because if we try to add any flourishes to it now, it's gonna be a lot easier for us to mess up. So I'm just filling this in here. MSP. And since mine got a little farther off, I'm just adding a little flourish over there. And then into. And then fall. For the fall, I might use just the slightly thicker side of the Sharpie, holding it sideways. Makes it a little easier. Here we go. And now to the fun part of adding those thicks and thins. We're going to start with jump. So the little trick that I actually learned this in school, and as much as it's not a foolproof plan or rule, it really helps out when you don't have a brush pen, you're just trying to figure out some easy type, which is every downstroke is going to get thicker and then every upstroke is going to get thinner. There's obviously some rule breaking that I did here. Like with this U, I obviously went down on this stroke, but I think that will make it too thick. So I kept that thin and chose only put the thickness on the right side. So we're just going to go through and imagine just how we drew it originally. Where are the downstrokes? So for this J, the downstroke was really heavy at the top. So I'm just going to make this nice and thick and kind of bring it to a point following those original lines that we drew. And you can already start to see that it's looking very nice. It's kind of coming to a point here. And it kind of looks like already that it was drawn with a brush pen or a calligraphy pen. So we're just going to go through and do the same thing here. And just follow our lines. With the M, I'm mainly just doing it on these curves of the main part. I think it might get a little confusing if I added it on the beginning downstroke. It might start to look like an M with an extra leg. So now that we have this thickness in, go down here. For the P, I'm just kind of doing a crescent versus having that whole arc be thick. And then for this little loop-de-loop I did here, I'm just going to add a little thickness here. Just for fun. Make it a little different, fun. Here we go. And then also, I added some just fun flourishes to the ending just because I just wanted to. I thought it'd be fun. So if you want to do that, you can even pull in a different color and add that in. Whatever you think looks nice. And then we're also going to do the same thing with the fall, except I'm going to keep it consistent. So I'm just going to make the fall thicker. I'm not going to make it look like it was done with a brush pen. I want it to be a little bit different than jump. I'm just going to make these lines a little thicker. Because then what I'm going to do is those accent lines that I have on fall, you'll see on this version. It's almost making it like it's 3D without having to fill in all the shapes and actually making it 3D. It just helps it stand out a little bit. Go down, do that. Perfect. And then we're just going to add the accents to the edges. So we're just going to follow the edge of the F and put on the bottoms here. Again, almost imagining as if it was 3D, but you're just drawing the lines. This one, here we go. There we go. Awesome. So now we have our lovely type. So now that we have that done and we know we can move on to this and go back to the shading, we can jump into that. but I'm excited to see what you guys did with this. I'm so excited. So jumping back into these leaves down here, let's see if this Sharpie has ink in it again. Excuse me. So we're gonna go back and just like I was talking about before, excuse me, we're just gonna go in and just like shade the bottom edges. All right, it's running out. I have spares, don't worry. Here we go. There we go. Look at that. Look at the ink on that. I use these too often. I'm running out of ink on all of them. Awesome. All right, so we're just gonna finish this out. Get that nice and cleared up. Ooh, I have another trivia thing as well. We're making some wreaths, and I feel like a lot of families have multiple wreaths depending on what season it's in, or even holidays too. There's a lot of different ones out there, but I want to know, does anyone know what the original use was for a wreath? Anybody have any guesses? The original use or reason for having a wreath? Now, I don't know the full history on it, but I have an answer for that. So if anyone wants to put in the chat and tell me what they think it is, I'll keep my eye out. That's a good guess to put on your head. That was one of the ways of using it, yes. But there is actually a little bit of history of people putting it on their doors too. I'll wait another moment. Yeah, it was actually not the Greeks. You said that, Emma? I mean, I'm pretty sure the Greeks did it as well, but when I was looking into it, it seemed that the Romans actually started it. And it was actually a sign of either victory or your status or even just pride. So maybe during an event, that's when they'd put it on their heads. And then to scare away ghosts, yes. That could be one way of doing it. But yeah, people would put it on their heads for pride, things like celebrating things. People would put it on their doors too for that as well. So I guess it kind of always has been what it is even now. It's just kind of a celebratory type of decoration. Awesome. All right, so now that we have this part a little bit more shaded, just like I did with these smaller leaves, I think I want a little bit more mid-tone. So I might just quick go back to one of these lighter greens. Ooh, that's a light green. I'm just gonna fill in just a little bit here, just so it's a little bit more green in the centers here. And you can even see while I'm doing that, it's actually kind of blending a little bit of the darks into the center, which is actually giving it a nice blended look. And the way that the Sharpies kind of lay on the wood too is really nice. It's almost acting like paint because it's not absorbing it like paper does. It's kind of sitting directly on top. There we go. Perfect. All right. So now that we actually, I think we have some time. We do. Awesome. So we can go into outlining and actually doing the veins of the leaves and everything. So I'm going to grab a black Sharpie. And also, you don't have to use black. I mean, you could technically even grab just like a super dark blue if you want. Like if you have blue, like a blue wreath or blue leaves, you can just use super dark blue. But I'm just going to use black just so it's like super bold. And it also goes over all the colors. Let me quick see. Someone has a question. Oh yeah, I still have my fall wreath on my door, even though it's snowing. And I have a winter one. I just need to switch to it. Haven't done it yet, but I will. Awesome. So going into outlining, I'm not going to outline the lettering because I think once I add another layer onto that, it's going to be hard to read. So I'm just going to go through and just outline it, just as it sounds, just outlining it. You don't have to worry about doing those veins yet. And what's fun about this is just this becomes almost mesmerizing because you don't really have to think at this point. It's just following the lines that you already created. And then also don't forget that with those berries, don't worry about outlining every single one because it actually kind of looks nice when they look like they're kind of floating. So with this, I actually did what we did when we shaded it and just put the outline on the outsides. And it almost looks like they're kind of three-dimensional and they're kind of layering over top of each other that way. So don't worry about drawing them full circles. So I'm just going to go around. There we go. And again, also, if you guys don't want to have this outlined, you might just be going through this and thinking, oh, maybe I need more yellow here. Maybe I want more green here. This is the perfect time to go back and take a step away from your work and just kind of look at what you have. Be proud of yourself, and then also see where you did great work, maybe where you want to add more work. A time for self-critique, pretty much. In school, I was always told to constantly take a step back from your work, because when you get too close to it, you kind of forget what it looks like altogether. So take time to do that. All right, so once I have that done, I'm just going to show you how to do one side, just so that in case we can always do that later. So I'm just going to go over the leaves just in the shape that they are. And I'm just going to add a line in the center and then maybe just a couple veins. I don't want to get too detailed because I think it's going to get a little too muddy if I do that. And again, just like I said with the berries, I'm just doing the sides, just doing little arcs, tiny little arcs, just to fill them in. And I want to do this quick because I really want to see your guys' stuff too. I want to see what you guys created. I'm also not going to add veins on all of them. Sometimes I like to have some of them just have that center vein and then not have the branching off ones. I think sometimes when we add too many on them, it starts to get a little busy. And I really want the center of this piece to be the focus and not all the details in the leaves necessarily. There we go. Just quickly outlining everything. And then same thing with the berries and the leaves in here. I'm just going to get some nice thick lines. I'm going to hold the Sharpie at an angle. Just get a nice thick line outlining these leaves. There we go. And yeah, that's what's great about using black for an outline, is that it goes over every single color, so you don't have to worry about losing that line. And then just being careful with these circles here. Again, bringing back the idea of using this as a lazy Susan, just kind of spinning it. Depending on the table you're on, it might be a little harder to spin it, but this table I'm on is so slick that I could just slide it around. There we go. And then of course, if you really wanted to, you could also go back in and add shading with the black. I think it starts to get a little bit more flat when you use black with color for shading. That's why we were trying to use the same tones and colors, just darker. But you can always go in and add some lines in there as well. All right. Now we did that to these bigger leaves. And we're almost done, guys. Look at this. All we're really doing is just outlining our artwork. To be fair, outlining is almost like adding the, what is it, the mascara to a makeup look. It's like the finishing touch, and then it's like so nice. So we're just gonna add the veins in here. There we go. Let me just add a couple here, branching off. Awesome, awesome. Quick check the chat. Oh yeah, that's awesome. I want to see the one on sketch paper. Yeah, you don't have to worry about what is on. You can do this on any type of media. Yeah, absolutely. Mixed media paper. In fact, that would probably be a good type of paper, because whenever I'm using Sharpie that's not on some type of mixed media like this, where it's just like a board, I actually tend to use either Bristol paper or watercolor paper, just something that's a little bit thicker, so it actually can hold the ink. Oh, can I answer the wreath question? Oh yeah, the question about where it originated from. It was just from the Romans, who they used it as ways to show victory and pride. It was still almost how we use it today, which is kind of a celebration. And they would wear it on their heads as well as put it on their doors. So everyone might imagine just being on their heads, but they actually use it on their doors too, and they hung them. I'm pretty sure they were a lot smaller than what we have now though. So I think we took it to another level. All right, so we're just gonna finish up with outlining on this side. But if we want, while I'm doing this outside, since we did it on this side, if anyone has any questions or wants to share their artwork, I would love to see it. But yeah, right now I'm just finishing up this outline over here. And this part's easy. Awesome. Yep. And so once we do this, then we can turn on the cameras or switch off the spotlight on me at least. And then I can see your guys' stuff too. Let's see. Some Canson watercolor. And I think, yeah, those are great. One thing about watercolor I found is I like the way it holds the ink. But sometimes when you're trying to blend Sharpie, I've done a lot of blending with Sharpie. Watercolor can be helpful, but there's also a sense where it kind of absorbs too much of the Sharpie. So you start to kind of lose the vibrancy as well as the ability to blend them. So that's where Bristol comes in. It's a little bit smoother, but it still has that thickness to the paper. So you can always use that depending on what you're using it for. Can you get to outlining details? What if you're, well, if you're icing cookies? I think I might need more clarification on that one. I would not recommend using Sharpies on cookies. If you mean figuring out details, I mean, I don't see why you couldn't use Sharpies to like sketch out details and stuff and then using that for your cookies. But I might need more clarification. Who is that? Trina? There we go. Just going through here. There we go. Awesome. I'm just gonna add a couple more in there. There you go. And now I have a lovely sign. And so I was planning on leaving this up like in my dining room and then also maybe hanging it up by my door. Since I have that fall wreath still hanging up, might as well put this behind it. So it's kind of like a wreath within a wreath. I'm actually kind of really excited about that. So there you go. Oh, can you get, oh, using icing. I don't have a ton of experience with icing, but from what I know at Michael's, actually, I actually just bought a kit because I'm new to baking, but you can actually get kits at Michael's that have like super detailed tips for icing cakes. And my mom bakes, and when she does that, you can get some pretty fine detail when you have those different tip sizes. So similar to drawing with Sharpies and everything, you can kind of get kits for that for icing cakes and cookies. They just come in different sizes. So as long as you have ones that are super small, and as long as your icing is the right consistency, you can kind of work your way through that. But yeah, so there we have it, guys. Lovely sign. And if anyone wants to share their work, I would love to see it. And also don't forget to post on social media too, because if I don't get to see it now, if you want to post it later and tag me and tag Michael's, I'll be like going through those hashtags looking for it because I love seeing what everyone's making and like their own little flares that people put on it. So I would love to see it, guys. And thank you for joining. And don't forget, there's also tons of other classes on michaels.com. There's so many good instructors on there. And there's a couple of my coworkers who also do some classes. There's so many talented people on there. So check them out. But yeah, we have a little bit of time. So if anyone has any questions or if anyone wants to share their screen, we can take a look at what everyone's made.
I can spotlight a few people if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with Tatiana.
Oh, that's awesome. I love
And
the
then-
way that you did the type though. because it's not the way I did it, but I was so curious to see how people were gonna do that. I love that you have almost like a flower in the center. It's beautiful.
So here we have Emma.
Oh, nice. Look at all the leaves. I love that. See, I should have put more leaves on mine. You have so much more color in yours. Beautiful, guys.
And Yelena.
Oh, whoa. That is so nice. What is that? What paper is that on? It came out really nice.
So here we have Cida Mendoza.
Oh, I love that. See, some people connected the top and it still looks great. It truly is like a wreath. Beautiful.
And Michaela von Berg.
Oh, yay. Oh my gosh, I love the way you did the berries and the 3 leaves. They're like such, like almost like a mane of a lion. It's just like coming bursting out. That's great.
And I believe that's it.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, guys. I'm so glad I got to see your stuff. And also, thanks so much for joining me with making this lovely sign. We have a little bit of time. I don't know if we want to wait for more questions or if anyone else has any other comments too. But otherwise, I think we're good to go.
Looks
I
like
forgot.
no more questions right now, just a bunch of thank yous. So it looks like
Oh,
everyone
you're welcome,
enjoyed the class.
guys. Thanks so much for joining me, guys.
Thank you. And thank you, Summer, for teaching another amazing class.
Oh, absolutely. I love it.
So see you guys next time.
All right. See you guys.
Bye.